Hello everyone, welcome to this video presentation. In this video presentation, we are going to talk about the transnationals becoming English teacher in Mexico, ethics of language brokering and identity formation. And this video presentation is presented by Jose Tapia and Paula Gallardo. We are going to start with the transnationalism concept. Maybe we can look a little bit confused this term, but it really easy to identify what it's mean, because it's a little bit differs with the concept of immigration, but no, it's the same. Transnationalism and immigration have two different purposes, or have these two concepts have two ways to identify to the persons. And well, the term has been characterized the dense social networks that go beyond to the national borders created by the physical, emotional, and economic movements. And well, the transnationality could even characterized to the exchanges of people, ideas, technology, and the money between nations. That is a little bit curious because we could easily identify it as a concept similar to the immigration. However, transnationalism and immigration are not the same. I'm going to share one author that said the latter involves a more permanent affiliation with the host country and separation from the country, while the former might imply to no long-term intention to the stay beyond what is economically necessary. And well, what is that immigration refers? Just is the only purpose that immigration have, or when one person immigrates to the another country, it's for economic needs. And well, in short, immigration is when a person seeks economic advancement. That is the same I said. And the transnationalism having two cultural concepts. As for transnationalism, which differs from immigration, this is when both the culture of the region of the person adapts the culture to the country where that immigrate to. And it does not seek the progress economically, but both cultures are part of the person. Besides, the person is bilingual, and they have developed the ability to convert both way to the life into the one. Tribal authors say that also transnationalism can lead to the process of becoming other to both home and host national cultural context, implying the development of the traditional identities and social relations. Now, when we move on with language brokering and the conflicts of identity, to an example, to introduce this section, it's when Mexico and the United States had a difficult social political situation. It is known that Mexico is one of the main countries where people migrate to the United States. However, in one time, there were many people deported to their country of origin, young adults who were looking to grow economically. In this situation, children who are returning to the country of origin of their families started developing their identities by mirroring the dominant community. And well, in this part, we have maybe two characteristics that we can identify. One of them is the language brokering. Is begin when the parents have their child or children acts as translation. And this could be begin to part of the language errors for student children. As consequences arises when the parents use the children to translate in different concepts and circumstances that move on to the children may enter in a state of conflict. And well, identity conflicts occur at the same time. Occurs at the same time when a child has to use both language, and they often cannot concentrate on who they really are. I'm going to cite another author that said He's stated that it's crucial that children should be surrounded by supportive social environment so that they can adequately develop the positive sense of who they are, develop of the positive sense of who they are. And one of the biggest confusion one can have in being a linguistic intermediary is that one fulfills the expectation of others by mastering the language, but no one's own expectation of carry to the cultures. And well, to be recognized by the community of the social group, one has to have a distinctive ethnicity arises from the relations with the others, defining who they are only implied in a image of themselves. Identity formation happens in one similar way. Their feelings towards an American or a Mexican ethnic group often makes it difficult to define who they are and what they want to be become in the future. Such groups tend to name themselves whose name society and also the signs as a Mexican American, Italian American, Polish American, and African American. Participants who have lived in two different countries often do not meet the identified expectation of both places and thus and all begin to first to the translation for their parents, possibly begin fluent in the both language, but not identifying as either of the two cultures they come from. The translation serves then only to be able to survive in American environment and to be able to relate to the people there. But when they find themselves in Mexico, the linguistics and cultural skills they possess from the other country, they confront only serves as an advantage to those who do not have this skill and are considered to be at an older age of social autonomy. These translations, people are quickly classified as native English speaker because of their own influences and native pronunciation. For this reason, they are then asked why there are no so Mexican and there's also the heritage. For the same reason, the transnational children have lived half of their life in the country and the other half in another. And a clumsy identify it's great, and they will be called ni de aquí, ni de allá. And well, many times, thanks to the social pressure started to give transnationals an identity, they suffered the variance of even losing their mother tongue in order to acquire the new one. And after they return to their country of origin, they have to learn another language again. As well as being a traditional person has a great conflict with the definition of identity of who is one at the moment of having mastered of the second language. One can even go through a social economic process because the traditional people had become English teacher even before the TESOL studies because they are considered native speaker of the language and that is enough to become teachers of the language. There is a great advantage of and disadvantage of the of being children and immigrants can define the professional future of the child even with the many difficulties. And well, now we are going to move on with the methodology of this study. And the methodology of the study, we can identify two concepts maybe that gives the meaning of the methodology. And one of them is the qualitative approach. This means that the words and action of the people were examined narratively or descriptively, taking into account the situation experienced by the participants. Furthermore, this research is based on the narrative inquiry, which refers to the public expression of the understanding of the knowledge, experiences, and people of the professional life. And this approach, outlined in the study, was the most appropriate, since in the end we wanted to make known the experiences that are based on the formation of the identity of each participant, and the experiences come to define who you are. Since the emotional feelings that you get to the experiences will give way to be able to say who you are and where you came from. And well, the narrative presents the narrative presents the experiences in a temporary way and shows that people's understandings and beliefs change. Also, we have two questions that the students base to can identify what is the purpose to the participants to be the English teacher. And the first question is, what experiences have led these translations to choose in BA and in TESOL? And why do they want to become English teachers? Since the purpose of this study is to analyze how participants with the language skill performed the decisive role of becoming English teachers during their identity formation.
Okay, so the participants. For all the participants of this research are between the ages of 19 and 29. They are all Mexican and have moved to the US at a young age. They lived in the US for about 17 years. All of them maintained contact with their home country through relatives and by utilizing the heritage language. All participants returned to Mexico. The participants lived in Mexico for a short period of time and were studying a TESOL BA program. Okay, so data collection. All the participants wrote a short autobiography, which served as a starting point. Then the researchers conducted interviews. They asked questions based on the autobiography the participants wrote. All the interviews were recorded, transcribed, coded, and analyzed. So the data analysis. The researchers analyzed the data and decided to group up the information depending on how their experiences were similar. So the results. The researchers decided to divide the results into two different categories. The first one, early bilingualism and their parents' policy. This category refers to the early stages of bilingualism in the participants and what their parents enforced on them concerning language use. The second category, which was named going against these policies when parents needed help and how it influenced them to become teachers, refers to the moments when parents would ask their kids to use English, even though they were asked to not use it. Well, they weren't allowed to use it, and how it influenced their decisions to becoming English teachers. So the first contact with both languages or the parents' policies. All the participants of the research were forced to speak Spanish at home, all but one actually. Some parents justify their language policies by saying that in school they would use and learn English. This meant that they had to use Spanish at home so they did not forget their heritage language. This policy basically served as a way to ensure that the participant did not completely lose their heritage language, as was the case for some relatives of the participants. Some of them mentioned that their cousin did not speak any Spanish. On the other hand, one of them decided to use Spanish on their own. They thought that it was for the best since his parents were not fluent English speakers. This helped his parents and him communicate effectively. Some of them would use English behind their parents' back. They would talk with certain family members who also understood the English language. However, when their parents were present, they would strictly speak Spanish. Language brokering. Like most Hispanic bilingual kids living in the US, the participants had to assume the role of language brokers. As we expected, some of the participants had issues assuming this role. This can be caused by lack of knowledge of the language. As the participants get older, these issues become less frequent since the participant obtains more information about the language throughout their years. Most of the participants were asked to interpret between a doctor and their parents. This is very stressing for many reasons, the main one being that some of the participants lacked the necessary knowledge to interpret what the doctor was saying. Another reason is that when interpreting something as important as medical information, a small error could be catastrophic. It could lead to many problems, including incorrect use of medications and misunderstandings between the doctor and patient. So Influence on career choices. Most of the participants felt pride of their bilingual abilities. This was caused thanks to the sensation of being useful. Some of them mentioned that they enjoyed helping their mom. Others mentioned that they felt pride because people would acknowledge their bilingual ability and their values as bilingual speakers. This was the case for one of the participants. The school he was attending would ask for his help when a student who doesn't speak English would transfer into the school. This feeling of pride and usefulness helped encourage some of the participants to become English teachers in Mexico. Another participant was encouraged by his relatives. The participant did not know what to study. A relative of his encouraged him to study English since he already had control over the language. This was actually my case. At the time of deciding on a career, I wasn't fully sure of what to study. I'd always thought of studying mechatronic engineering. I actually applied to 2 different schools. At the end, it was my parents, relatives, and a professor of mine who influenced my career choice. So me, honestly, when reading this, I remember a lot of things that I went through. I can relate to all participants. I was born here in Mexico, more specifically in the capital of Guanajuato. I moved at a very young age to the United States. I spent 14 to 15 years of my life in the US. My parents were not fluent English speakers, so I had to assume the role of language broker quite often. I would have to be the interpreter for my dad and my teacher whenever he attended a parent-teacher meeting. Also, when he would go on trips to certain places where no one spoke Spanish, I would have to take responsibility. Being a language broker is stressful at a young age. Once the interpreter develops his control over the language, it becomes much easier. Then I decided it was time to come to Mexico. I studied my last 3 years of high school here. I hardly used English these 3 years. I took a placement exam, so I wouldn't need to take English. I think the main reason why I suppressed it was because I wanted to fit in. I did not want to stand out from the rest. Years passed and it was time to decide on a career. As I previously mentioned, I had always thought about being a mechatronic engineer. I'm not going to lie, the idea of being an English teacher was always in the back of my head as a possibility in case I didn't get into the mechatronic engineering career. I'd always liked helping others. Besides that, I felt that English was the one of the few topics I felt comfortable with. With all this said, I agree that bilingual children and monolingual children do not share the same experiences. I remember when I was younger, people would say that I was mature for my age. I assumed this was because I had experienced situations where I was required to have an adult-like maturity. And that'll be it. Thanks for watching.